Let us continue with your government exam preparation series. This is SS1 Topic 6. We are discussing the structure and organization of government, specifically the arms of government. This topic appears in your exams every single year. By the end of this lesson, you will understand the three arms of government, the functions of each arm, the relationship between them, the concept of separation of powers, checks and balances, and how to answer exam questions. Take your notes. Let us go. First, what are the arms of government? The arms of government are the three branches into which government is divided. They are the legislature, the executive, and the judiciary. Each arm has its own functions and powers. Each arm is separate from the others. This separation prevents any one arm from becoming too powerful. The three arms work together to govern the country. The legislature makes the laws. The executive implements the laws. The judiciary interprets the laws. This division is based on the idea of separation of powers, which was developed by the French philosopher Montesquieu. Now let me explain the legislature. The legislature is the arm of government that makes laws. It is also called the Parliament, Congress, or National Assembly. In Nigeria, the legislature is called the National Assembly. It has two chambers. The Senate is the upper chamber. The House of Representatives is the lower chamber. This is called a bicameral legislature. Some countries have a unicameral legislature with only one chamber. The functions of the legislature include lawmaking, which is the primary function. The legislature debates, proposes laws, amends them, and votes on them. When a law is passed, it is called an act of parliament. The second function is representation. Legislators represent the people who elected them. They bring the concerns of their constituents to the legislature. They speak on behalf of the people. The third function is oversight. The legislature monitors the executive to ensure it is implementing laws correctly. Legislators ask questions of ministers. They conduct investigations. They can summon officials to testify. The fourth function is approval of budgets. The legislature must approve the government's budget. Without this approval, the government cannot spend money. The fifth function is ratification of appointments. In many countries, the legislature must confirm the president's appointments to key positions like ministers, judges, and ambassadors. The sixth function is impeachment. The legislature can remove the president or other high officials for misconduct. This is called impeachment. The seventh function is amending the constitution. The legislature can change the constitution, usually with a supermajority vote. The eighth function is oversight of foreign policy. The legislature ratifies treaties and declarations of war. The ninth function is providing a forum for debate. The legislature is where national issues are discussed. The public can see what their leaders are thinking. The 10th function is representation of diverse interests. Different regions, ethnic groups, and social classes have a voice in the legislature. Now let me explain the executive. The executive is the arm of government that implements and enforces laws. It is also called the government or the administration. In Nigeria, the executive includes the president, the vice president, ministers, and government agencies. The president is the head of state and head of government. The executive is responsible for running the country day to day. The functions of the executive include implementation of laws. The executive takes the laws passed by the legislature and puts them into effect. Government ministries and agencies carry out the laws. The second function is foreign policy. The executive represents the country in international affairs. The president meets with other leaders. The foreign ministry conducts diplomacy. The executive negotiates treaties, but the legislature must ratify them. The third function is defense. The executive is the commander-in-chief of the armed forces. The president can deploy troops, but a declaration of war may require legislative approval. The fourth function is law enforcement. The police and other law enforcement agencies are part of the executive. They arrest lawbreakers and maintain order. The fifth function is appointment. The executive appoints ministers, judges, ambassadors, and other officials. Some appointments require legislative confirmation. The sixth function is budget preparation. The executive prepares the national budget and submits it to the legislature for approval. The seventh function is issuing executive orders. The president can issue orders that have the force of law without going through the legislature. These orders must be consistent with existing laws. The eighth function is granting pardons. The president can pardon people convicted of crimes. This is called executive clemency. The ninth function is summoning and proroguing the legislature. The president can call the legislature into session and end sessions. The 10th function is preparation of the agenda. The executive proposes laws to the legislature. Most laws originate in the executive branch. Now let me explain the judiciary. The judiciary is the arm of government that interprets laws and administers justice. It is also called the court system. In Nigeria, the judiciary includes the Supreme Court, the Court of Appeal, the Federal High Court, state courts, and customary courts. The Supreme Court is the highest court. Its decisions are final. The functions of the judiciary include interpretation of laws. When there is a dispute about what a law means, the courts decide. Their interpretation is binding. The second function is dispute resolution. Courts settle disputes between individuals and the government, and between different levels of government. The third function is judicial review. Courts can declare laws unconstitutional. If a law violates the Constitution, the courts can strike it down. This is a very important power. It allows the judiciary to check the legislature and the executive. The fourth function is protection of rights. Courts protect the fundamental rights of citizens. If the government violates someone's rights, the victim can go to court. The court can order the government to stop. The fifth function is interpretation of the Constitution. The courts, especially the Supreme Court, interpret the meaning of the Constitution. Their interpretations become part of constitutional law. The sixth function is hearing appeals. Lower courts make decisions. Losing parties can appeal to higher courts. The appeal courts review the decisions of lower courts for errors. The seventh function is advising the government. In some countries, the highest court can advise the government on legal questions. The eighth function is administration of justice. Courts conduct trials, hear evidence, and impose sentences on those found guilty. The ninth function is making case law. When courts decide cases, their decisions become precedents. Future courts follow these precedents. This body of decisions is called case law or common law. Now let me explain the concept of separation of powers. Separation of powers means that the three arms of government are separate and independent. No person can serve in more than one arm at the same time. A minister cannot also be a legislator. A judge cannot also be a minister. The powers of each arm are clearly defined. The legislature makes laws. The executive implements them. The judiciary interprets them. Separation of powers prevents tyranny. If one arm held all power, that arm could abuse it. By separating powers, each arm checks the others. No arm can become too powerful. Now, let me explain checks and balances. Checks and balances are the mechanisms that allow each arm of government to limit the powers of the others. Separation of powers alone is not enough. The arms must also have the ability to check each other. The legislature checks the executive by approving budgets, ratifying appointments, conducting oversight, and impeaching the president. The legislature checks the judiciary by confirming judges and by impeaching judges for misconduct. The executive checks the legislature by vetoing bills. The president can refuse to sign a law passed by the legislature. The legislature can override the veto with a 2/3 majority. The executive checks the judiciary by appointing judges. The president chooses judges, though the legislature may confirm them. The judiciary checks the legislature by declaring laws unconstitutional. If the legislature passes a law that violates the Constitution, the courts can strike it down. The judiciary checks the executive by declaring executive actions unconstitutional. If the president does something that violates the law or the Constitution, the courts can stop it. The judiciary also checks the executive by issuing warrants, hearing cases against government officials, and interpreting laws that the executive must follow. Now let me explain the differences between the presidential system and the parliamentary system. In a presidential system like Nigeria and the United States, the president is both head of state and head of government. The president is elected separately from the legislature. The president cannot be removed by the legislature except through impeachment. The president appoints ministers who are not members of the legislature. The president serves a fixed term. In a parliamentary system like the United Kingdom, the head of state is a monarch or president. The head of government is the prime minister. The prime minister is a member of the legislature. The prime minister can be removed by a vote of no confidence. The prime minister's ministers are also members of the legislature. The prime minister serves as long as they have the confidence of the legislature. A common exam question asks you to identify the three arms of government and state their functions. Here is a sample answer. The three arms of government are the legislature, the executive, and the judiciary. The legislature makes laws. The executive implements and enforces laws. The judiciary interprets laws and administers justice. Each arm has specific functions that contribute to the governance of the country. No arm should perform the functions of another. Another exam question asks you to explain the concept of separation of powers. Here is your answer. Separation of powers is the division of government into three separate arms. Each arm has its own functions and powers. No person can serve in more than one arm at the same time. The purpose of separation of powers is to prevent any one arm from becoming too powerful. It is a safeguard against tyranny. Another exam question asks you to explain the system of checks and balances. Here is your answer. Checks and balances are mechanisms that allow each arm of government to limit the powers of the others. The legislature can check the executive by approving budgets, ratifying appointments, and impeaching. The executive can check the legislature by vetoing bills. The judiciary can check both by declaring laws and actions unconstitutional. Checks and balances ensure that no arm abuses its power. Here is what you need to take away. The three arms of government are the legislature, executive, and judiciary. The legislature makes laws. The executive implements laws. The judiciary interprets laws. Separation of powers divides power among the three arms. Checks and balances allow each arm to limit the others. The presidential system has a separate elected president. The parliamentary system has a prime minister drawn from the legislature. Understanding the structure and organization of government is essential for understanding how any country is governed. Practice these concepts. When you have them down, move to topic 7.